Over my years in ministry, most recently I have come to respect and receive blessings from this Message translation of the Bible. Over and over, it uses words and phrases in familiar places, sometimes too familiar, that takes me by surprise when I read it. I go, whoa, where'd that come from? And it grabs my attention, and the blessing is when it opens new vistas of revelation. It has often taken my theology to a wider and fuller expression of the divine and my place in the divine. Such was the case this week in preparing for this reflection of Pentecost concerning spiritual gifts, where the message sprints right out of the gate in the 12th chapter with the words, everywhere. Everywhere, everywhere, everyone, but the one Spirit of the one God. 4 times in the first few verses, those words are proclaimed. So as Paul sprints out of the gate in the 12th chapter, I want to backtrack a little bit, just for a moment, and see what lessons the Spirit is teaching us regarding our spiritual gifts in my Pentecost reflection this year. And the first is this. It says all believers are blessed with a spiritual gift. Please do not miss those 2 key words. All believers. Guess what? That means me and you. Each of us. The Pentecost event is the coming to faith in Jesus by thousands, we are told, who now believe as a result of God's Spirit within them. Today's Pentecost event is the affirmation of the spiritual gift or gifts within you that Paul spoke of to the church in Corinth over 2,000 years ago. So our task is to recognize the gift within us, knowing that God never calls us into ministry without first equipping us for that ministry. Perhaps you've heard it said over the years, God doesn't call the qualified, He qualifies the called. But embracing this truth, we must be very careful not to devalue our spiritual gift or gifts. Here's what I mean. It's been my experience in the church that at times we tend to create a false hierarchy of gifts, where there are those spotlight gifts, those that are done in public, and at times they seem to trump the servant gifts, often not on public display. For example, we may applaud, and rightfully so, give thanks to God for an inspiring witness. We may get to our feet, rightly so, to give thanks to God for a moving piece of music. But you know, in over my many years of ministry, I've never seen people in a room off by themselves holding a meeting of 8 to 10 people, and at the end of that meeting, everyone breaks into applause for a well-run meeting. Well, maybe they did if it was short. I've never seen a team of people in another meeting, in another room, get to their feet and give a standing O for a precise financial report. I've never seen applause break out after someone visits a shut-in alone. But all these gifts are vital, and all these gifts are necessary, and all believers are blessed with a spiritual gift or gifts. But secondly, as we grow in faith with our gifts, we see our gift as interdependent with one another. Please get that word, interdependent. What a wonderful, healthy, and empowering understanding of the church, where we are not merely independent of each other, where Harry, Larry, and Mary are just doing their own thing in separate rooms, doing what they want to do, how they think they need to do it, independently. And we are not dependent totally on each other, where Harry, Mary, and Larry can't do their work until Harry, Mary, and Larry do their work. No. We are interdependent with one another. A relationship of our spiritual gifts that creates synergy, collaboration, and cooperation with each other. Let me explain this in two ways. First, a disclaimer. If you are not a basketball fan, hang in there with me for about 2 minutes. If you are, I just made your day. I read something this week in preparation for this reflection about the National Basketball Association, the NBA. And the article said that back in the 1990s, the late 1990s, the NBA saw a sharp decrease in two specific statistics: scoring and assists. Now, if you're not familiar with basketball, a score, of course, is when you make a basket. An assist is awarded to a person only if, in the judgment of the statistician, a player's pass to another player contributes directly to that teammate making a basket. So if I have the ball and I throw it to my teammate and they shoot and they score, I would get an assist. The player would get the basket. Now think about this. In the late 1990s, this was the Michael Jordan era, who along with many other players included prolific scorers. But interestingly enough, they were such good scorers, they didn't need anyone else's help. As a matter of fact, a lot of the plays was just get out of their way and let it happen. And in so doing, during that span within the NBA, scoring dropped. Assists decreased. That's why I admire John Stockton. Played 19 years in the National Basketball Association, NBA. And he ended up, now get this, with 15,806 assists. 15,806 times he passed the ball to a player who scored somehow. 15,806 times he created synergy, collaboration, cooperation with someone. 15,806 times John Stockton helped his team score. Boy, I really thought about that this week. I hope at the end of my life I can come before God like John Stockton. Lord, 15,806 times I created synergy. I created people to use their gifts and to do so freely. I love the words of Bishop T.D. Jakes. He says this, very apropos from what we just heard in our music. Quote, "There's a difference between harmony, which is derived from two distinctly different notes that blend together, and unison, the same note made at the same time. Harmony is far more appealing to the ear than unison. Your relationship should be harmonious without being in unison." End quote. I believe when we fail to value and use all the spiritual gifts in the church, then we are guilty of just simply singing in unison. But when all the spiritual gifts are valued equally and used effectively, then the church impacts the world most effectively, because I believe the Church of Jesus Christ was created to work in harmony. Which brings me to my final thought. Our spiritual gift or gifts is given for one purpose and one purpose only. And that is to empower the Church of Jesus Christ. The work of the church is not limited to human potential. Let me repeat that. The work of the church is not limited to human potential, but as is often the case, when we are confronted with a challenge, we look only towards our ability rather than God's capacity. We look towards our ability rather than God's capacity. It's written in 1 Peter chapter 4, verses 10 to 11. These words. Be generous with the different things God gave you, passing them around so all get in on it. If words, let it be God's words. If help, let it be God's hearty help. That way, God's bright presence, I like that, God's bright presence will be evident in everything through Jesus Christ. And he'll get all the credit as the one mighty in everything. On course to the end of time, oh yes. Our gifts have one purpose, and that is to bring the light of Jesus to others. Now, we define it in our mission statement here at the Endwell United Methodist Church and in the United Methodist Church as making disciples for Jesus. Our gifts empower believers, disciples, each other to be the light, witness, and love of the one we worship. I end with this prayer that I am sure you've heard in part. It's a prayer of St. Teresa of Avila, written in the mid-1500s. I think it really describes the essence of spiritual gifts. She wrote this. Christ has no body now on earth but yours. No hands but yours. No feet but yours. Yours are the eyes through which the compassion of Christ must look out into the world. Yours are the feet with which God is to go about doing good. Yours are the hands with which God is to bless God's people. That, my very dear friends, is the very spirit of Pentecost.